Welcome everybody. We have a very full program with Maureen, Brian, and Orla, so we're going to get right started with it. Just to welcome you to the Deep Time Network, if you've never been here before. We are a network that's looking at everything inside the context of an evolving universe, which is what this program is all about as we look to the future and co-creating an Ecozoic era. I'm going to introduce our panelists. Maureen Wild worked 7 years on the educational staff of Genesis Farm Earth Literacy Center in Blairstown, New Jersey. That's where I met her. She worked 25 years on the British Columbia coast, co-founding a Center for Earth and Spirit, and over 30 years with the International Sisters of Earth Network. She's a gardener and is on the board of directors for creating a natural burial cemetery. Orla Hazra currently lives in Sarasota, Florida, after returning from 10 years in Mumbai, India. Her PhD research in religious education from Fordham University became a model for educational reform, considering the fourfold wisdom conversation developed by Thomas Berry that includes science, religion, women, and indigenous peoples. She is vice president of the Deep Time Network and is delighted to be witnessing the model in practice, healing our trauma of separation. Brian Tucker is the director of data systems and analytics at a major human services nonprofit in Philadelphia. He's trained as a spiritual director. He helps individuals and organizations connect spirituality with social justice. Brian serves on the Deep Time Network board and has an advisory role with the Cuyamunga Institute. Maureen, take it away.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you all for coming. I begin with some words from two of my teachers. Joanna Macy, who you may know has just died on July the 19th. She addressed a virtual conference when she was 92, and she said, "In facing the terrible situation for our planet today, I think it's very important to feel baffled and overwhelmed." Instead of despairing, she urged approaching the crisis as a birthing time, as well as a dying time. Forces and capacities are ready to birth inside each one of us if we keep our spunk and courage. And Thomas wrote in his chapter on the Ecozoic, "For the human, existence brings with it immense possibilities of delight, and yet a series of never-ceasing anxieties concerning survival, both physical and psychic. To reinvent the human as an individual, as a member of a human society, as a member of a particular biome, and as an earthling, we need to reinvent our basic patterns of work in such a way that the workings of the Earth community are mutually enhanced." I'm coming to you from Gabriola Island on the west coast of British Columbia and just across the Salish Sea from Vancouver. And the traditional lands and unceded territory of the Coast Salish First Nation, whose home this was for hundreds of generations. The waters teeming with sockeye salmon at this time of year, and migrating pods of orca, and a lush rainforest with towering Douglas fir, cedar, Gary oak, arbutus, and a forest floor of sword fern, salal, mosses, with myriad ocean life forms on the shores, and seagulls, eagles, heron, and songbirds in abundance. A silent pause for you now to call to mind the first peoples and native plants and creatures of the land and waters from where you come today. As communities and as individuals, they developed a deep sacred connection with the land, its forests, plants, berries, and animals, its wetlands, rivers, fish, lakes, and oceans. Never taking more than what was needed, they lived in a balanced way with the land and with the life in the waters, and they humbly learned from and took their instructions from nature. My own journey with learning about these selves was in the 90s when I lived and worked at Genesis Farm. Thomas came yearly to speak, and he gave us draft essays of what he was working on. His essay on the Ecozoic was one of these, within which he explores these 7 conditions. Genesis Farm offered Earth literacy programs at first to immerse students in the universe story, followed by a deep, extended dive into bioregional living. It was the great insight of Miriam McGillis, the founder of Genesis Farm, to use the 7 selves as the framework for bioregional living, what Thomas called living into the Ecozoic era. Each self was given ample time of study. The Genesis Farm Library was even organized with these 7 conditions of Earth and how they are reflected in human activities rooted in these natural patterns. Thomas's own sense of instructions was conditioned from an early encounter. Reaching into his own past in North Carolina, he recalled his boyhood experience of a meadow filled with lilies. This experience began to define his commitment to preserve and protect such beauty. By the early 80s, these ideas coalesced in his term, Ecozoic. Let's be reminded of his encounter and how he began connecting it to the 7 selves.
When I was about 11 years old, I and the family moved to a certain area, and before the house was finished, it was out on the border of things, and I went one morning in May down across the creek, and there was a meadow there of lilies, white lilies.
And there were crickets there, and butterflies. There were woodlands in the background, woodlands that extended for extensive way. That scene is something that I, of course, did not reflect on fully at that period in my childhood, but it stuck with me, has stuck with me all my life, and somehow deep in my unconscious I've brooded over that scene. And I've come to a kind of an awareness that that experience of the meadow has conditioned all my thinking. That is a good economics that is integral with the functioning of the meadow. An economics that violates the meadow is, to me, not a good economics. A good politics is what preserves that meadow and enables it to be protected from excessive intrusion or devastation by humans. That is a good religion that gives me some appreciation of the depth of meaning and the mystery of the matter. That is a good education that reveals to me, enables that matter to speak to me or to give me an understanding and a sense of the poetry of the matter.
Thomas was inspired by Earth's teachings, her instructions, as communicated through this early encounter with the meadow. You can read this full essay in the great work. The Ecozoic era was his way, excuse me, of marking the end of a geological era in which thousands of species are disappearing each year. The end of 65 million years since the Cenozoic era began and flourished with life. He saw the Ecozoic as that emerging period in which humans recover their creative orientation to the world. Thomas's draft essay by this title explores 6 of the selves. This will be provided for you as a resource. He included the 7th self in his 12 principles for understanding the universe and the human in the universe process. In doing so, Thomas always opens us to the larger context. Earth, he wrote, within the solar system is a self-emergent, self-propagating, self-nourishing, self-educating, self-governing, self-healing, and self-fulfilling community. Earth as self-emerging. Thomas wrote in the essay, rising out of the molten rocks are the continents, the forests, the meadows, and the human cities. Rising out of the primordial seas are both topsoil and power stations. In such work as architecture, technology, transportation, energy, housing, humans enter directly into the self-emergent dynamics of the earth in its most physical dimensions. Consider, what would our architecture, technology, transportation, energy, and housing look like if we took our instructions from Earth's self-emergent dynamics in their physical dimensions? Ponder this question, and if a word or 2 or 3 comes up for you, write it in the chat or unmute for a moment and speak your words. What comes to mind?
Integrating with the whole.
A technological indrasnet.
Womb-like transportation.
In the chat, I see harmony and balance, unobtrusive to the landscape. Village huts, breathing.
Thank you. Thomas, this is 40 years ago, that he wrote above all would be the creation of more biocentric transportation, architecture, and appliances. Light rail system in cities to replace most car use. Many streets could then be removed to allow the rich topsoil under asphalt to provide foods. And the appearance of plazas and parks where a more human interchange could be carried on. Rooftops of all the buildings could be used for gardens, with the gray water from sinks and baths used for irrigation. This is happening already in buildings in Canada. Entire walls of buildings would be banked with photovoltaic cells, enabling cities to do away with the costly dependence on heating fuels. Machinery would be constructed with the efficiency of the natural world, where each erg of energy is cherished and used. And here where I live on the coast, this is becoming very popular. Half the homes on Gabriola Island now have these heat pumps. Very popular, new and excellent way to both heat and cool one's home through heat exchange of outdoor air. Minimal electricity is needed. And this is what the indoor unit looks like. I have one and I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. And everybody says that about these here. If you're not familiar with them, look them up. Energy efficient architecture cuts energy requirements in half. So too with biocentric engineers, architects, and with biocentric technicians as well. Years ago, I had the great privilege to attend a talk by Dr. John Todd, or Jack Todd, and witness his amazing ecological design of natural wastewater treatment systems called living machines. He wrote that this kind of design taps deep into nature's operating instructions, organizing knowledge and ecosystems to serve human needs without despoiling the planet. He studied wetlands, observed how the waste of one species became the food for another. He discovered plants and organisms that can take up human sewage as food, thereby cleaning the water. An amazing design. All of this is also found within the contemporary wisdom of biomimicry, as articulated by natural science writer and innovation consultant Janine Benyus. Biomimicry looks to the authentic spontaneities within nature for solutions that emulate nature's ways. And if you're new to this idea of biomimicry, I'd encourage you to listen to one of her YouTubes. Here's one of them. This will be provided for you too in recommended resources. But at 20 minutes to listen to her, it's just very inspiring. This is Thomas's only context for all 7 conditions. It's the earth acting. Everything begins with the earth. We are earthlings. Earth is primary, Humans are derivative. It's not the other way around. The challenge is to intentionally live within the wisdom and balance of Earth's 7 conditions. To do so is living into the Ecozoic. How are you already aware of these 7 conditions of Earth's work within you? Are there ways you can see they are active in your daily life? That's just a question to take with you, carry with you throughout your day. But here's a little story of how these selves are noticed within my living in a snapshot of activities one morning and how I saw them at work. I took my dog Tilly for a walk this morning through the Douglas fir and cedar sentinels lining our streets and down to the rocky sandstone shoreline as the tide receded. I saw and heard a heron flying over us, and seconds later a second one, each calling out with raspy voices, something I didn't understand, but I'm sure they did, heading in the same direction towards a shoreline, probably buffet on this Salish coast. What information, guidance, or instructions had each communicated? Herons reveal self-learning, self-governing, self-nourishing. And I was recipient of their unexpected and awesome presence with such a wide wing expanse flying over us. A self-fulfilling moment in the heron dance of life has me pondering heron today. Before I left for this walk, I enjoyed my bowl of homemade granola with its Western Canadian prairie oats and bran, baked with local honey, Canadian sunflower oil, topped with ground Canadian flaxseed, BC Coast plain unsweetened yogurt, and BC blueberries, blackberries, and raspberries, all self-nourishing with as many local and Canadian ingredients as possible. I'm striving to become more energy conserving in the distance food travels to get to my stomach. Energy conservation designs are nature's way and relate to Earth's self-emerging theme. And I added to my granola, this is a lion's mane mushroom, but I have it in powdered form, a little powdered lion's mane mushroom, which I'd learned Buddhist monks use to enhance concentration and aid one's memory. At this stage of life, I need that. Along with my daily routine of a few nutrient-rich capsules to maintain my health in natural ways, echinacea for immunity, probiotics for gut health, glucosamine for my knees, and good old cranberry. I'm so grateful for them. I'm sure you have your own stories of nature's helping ways for your own self-healing needs. Tilly and I drink the rainwater, as it's our only local source of water, captured off the roof and stored in cisterns. There's no well here and no underground water being piped to this island community. Before drinking it, I make sure it's filtered a couple of ways, passing through infrared light to remove bacteria, and then a Sawyer filter modeled after the filter used in kidney dialysis machines. 2 ways to remove bacteria, grateful for the design of both. Not too different from a wetland's natural design with plants and small creatures filtering the water. Humans have found benign ways to make water potable without adding chemicals. It's 17 years now that this has worked for me with the limits of water here, a self-emerging design. Today is the 11th birthday for Jack, a sweet neighbor whose family moved here a year ago from Calgary. A couple of weeks ago, he wanted me to know it was his birthday coming up. So, knowing of his interest in gardening, I packaged up a few seeds for next year's growing from my sugar and snap peas, some local bush bean varieties, and special heirloom squash seeds. A little garden in a gift bag, self-propagating, imagining imagining Jack starting a whole new generation of peas, beans, and squash next spring. And I gave him a clever deck of biomimicry cards, Go Fish. And they match nature's innovation that has inspired human inventions. A little snapshot, and you might consider these selves as we unpack them, how they are weaving through your own being. I invite now Brian to carry on with Earth as self-governing.
Thank you, Maureen. I'd like to talk about Earth as self-governing, but for a moment, let's pause and reflect on this meadow that we see before us. And I'd like us to imagine ourselves as if this were our own nighttime dream. And in our dream, much like Thomas saw in real life, in our dream, we're looking out onto this field of meadow with the lilies growing and the thick grass and the woodland groves. And let's put ourselves for a moment in our bodies in that space and smell the fragrance of the lilies and feel the wind kind of blowing through the trees and among us, and feel the soil and smell the soil with us. We can hear the crickets in the distance. How might we be called, like the lilies, towards the earth, towards the beauty, towards the warmth of the sunlight? Bringing our attention back to this moment, how does Earth in a meadow or a forest floor or a flock of birds, a whale pod, how does Earth show us ways of engaged interaction in relation to ecosystems that truly serve to protect life? I grew up in San Diego, California, and during the summer months, my favorite activity, my mom took my brother and I to swim in the ocean, particularly Ocean Beach near the Mission Bay area of San Diego. And I'd love to body surf and enjoy all the different forms of aquatic life. But my favorite thing was to explore tide pools in the rocky parts of the beach. And here's a picture showing a sea anemone, but I'd often look and I'd see hermit crabs and limpets and barnacles and mussels and starfish and more. And I was just fascinated. I could do this for quite a long time. And I wondered, such a fragile ecosystem, how does all this life find its balance? And how does it propagate? How does this diversity in nature flourish? And I thought of this a bit of a metaphor then, you know, in the diversity of the ecosystem of the tide pool, much like the human diversity, the animal diversity, the diversity in nature, the diversity of a city, of a community, of a country, and across the globe, even expressed through multilateralism, through efforts at the United Nations level. So for a moment, if you could put into the chat, what examples come to mind from your own experience of nature, like Thomas's example of a meadow, or my experience of a tide pool in San Diego, where you've seen Earth come alive, protecting, enhancing, and empowering life? You could come off mic if you wanted to briefly say it out loud as well. A forest. Corals in the sea. The old growth forests. And water in the desert to foster the bloom of cactus and the birds, bees having a feed. Our own backyard and seining in the bay. Thank you. One of my friends, a Unitarian Universalist social activist and author of a book, Freedom, Democracy, and Community, writes, True freedom and democracy only make sense if they are based on how the earth actually works. The earth has its own ways of staying balanced and healthy, what Thomas Berry called self-governing. And if we ignore those natural rules, we risk losing our own freedoms. Real sustainable freedom must fit within earth principles of governance and economics. Yeah, that's Mike Wilson, Freedom, Democracy, and Community. Here is Berry's biocentric view of self-governance in a nutshell. Whatever preserves and enhances the meadow and the natural cycles of its transformation is good. What is opposed to this meadow or negates it is not good. From the standpoint of economics, that is good in economics that fosters the natural processes of this meadow. That is harmful in economics that diminishes the capacity of this meadow to renew itself each spring and provide a setting in which crickets can sing and birds can feed. And in terms of law, jurisprudence, and political affairs, that is good which recognizes the rights of this meadow and the creek and the woodlands beyond to exist and flourish in their ever-renewing seasonal expression, even while larger processes shape the bioregion in larger sequences of transformation. So I've been wrestling, as many of us have been here in the US, with societal dispiriting and disempowerment of many of our democratic structures of our government. I find right now that Thomas's teachings are especially helpful at this moment. He reminds us that all human institutions, programs, and activities must now be judged primarily by the extent to which they inhibit, ignore, or foster a mutually enhancing human-earth relationship. For me, this is the power of Berry's prophetic writings. They're so relevant to the time which each of us find ourselves living. I'd love to have each of you wake up from this moment as if awakening from a dream. This is our time to awaken to the dream of the earth. What engagements of the seven selves might you be called to for the sake of protecting the meadow in your bioregion? What ignites a sense of what's right, and what creative response and action might you engage in with others? How might these seven selves be alive in you right now?
Holding Brian's questions and everything you've experienced so far within this presentation, we're inviting you now into groups of 3 for 10 minutes. What's emerging for you? See your screen.
Okay. All right. I'm going to welcome back, everybody. I just put into the chat a link to a mind map that our team has prepared for you. And I'm just going to kind of walk through it and show you a little bit about how to navigate. This is called Mural, and it's a map of the seven selves. And when you click on that link, you want to enter as a visitor. And then you can just identify yourself if you like. And it will assign you a nice character. I'm a visiting bird. So, and it will tell you if you're using a computer with a mouse or a trackpad, you just indicate which one. So I'm using a mouse. And what happens then is the map comes up and it will show in this fashion. First, it's a high-level view, and what you want to do is click the outline, and the outline brings something up alongside that allows you to navigate and zoom in. So we're going to start by showing you the top level that Sister Maureen introduced to us. Earth as self-emerging, self-governing, self-educating, self-propagating, self-nourishing, self-healing, and self-fulfilling. And then each of these, if you click further, you can explore. This is an integrated view of all the selves and all the elements. Self-emerging, for example, we've spoken about these components, and we can go into the detail view, and we'll see for self-emerging design, energy systems, technology, transportation, work, housing, and architecture. And then the next level down takes you to examples. And I just want to point out that each of these that you see as circles actually are links. And if you just hover over it and you click it, a new window will emerge and it will take you to that particular link. And you can always click back on the tab to get back to the map that you were last on. So I'm just going to show you, we talked about self-governing. And self-governing has the element here, the details, Earth law, the rights of nature, Earth Charter, land ethics conservation, citizen empowerment, and community development. And I'm going to bring you to an example. We had spoken about different elements. I mentioned earlier the United Nations and multilateralism. So the Earth Charter is a great example, and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. But out of Sweden, there's an additional movement called the Interdevelopment Goals that complement the Sustainable Development Goals. If you click on this link, it will open up the resource for you so you can navigate. And what we'll do is, as you send me more examples, I'll grow this map and probably organize it a little differently. So I'll have similar topics on separate charts of lotuses here. But I'll put my email in the chat in a moment. But you want to, you can follow along the presentation, or afterwards, feel free to explore the different aspects that we have described here. We're going to be moving into self-educating and beyond. So I just wanted to give you a taste of what that is like, and I'll put my email in the chat. If you have questions further about this tool, I'd be happy to help you with it as well.
Thank you, Brian.
Yes.
What a wonderful resource. So we're on to Orla now for the next two.
Yes. Hello and greetings. Greetings from Sarasota, Florida. And I'm going to be speaking about moving towards the Ecozoic self as self-educating and self-propagating. And here's a map courtesy of oneearth.org. That'll be in the diagram that Brian just shared. And we have 185 discrete bioregions across Earth. And since today is International Day of World's Indigenous Peoples, I just want to honor, although there are only 6% of the total world population, there are 5,000 distinct cultures with ancestral wisdom, gifts, and stories, and acts of remembrance, and how they're actually honoring the seven selves. Okay. Self-educating, Thomas reminds us, without involvement in the central mysteries of Earth's vitality, education in its deepest cosmological meaning cannot be evoked. And I was looking at the word vital and the Latin origins, belonging to life. And here you have Alexander the Great in a drawing from 1430 as he contemplates the fact that his life is limited. Okay. One way to speak of the education process is via the three basic ordering tendencies of the universe: differentiation, subjectivity, and communion. So we've come to know this whole dynamic as cosmogenesis. So the Latin root, going back again, of education is to draw forth. So cosmogenesis, the universe, Earth, is drawing us forth. Okay. Again, he reminds us it's all a question of story. We're in between stories. The old story of the account of how the world came to be and how we fit into it is not functioning properly. We have not learned the new story. Okay. So I'm just going to take a little trip back in time to my own kind of entry point into the story, although I really didn't know about the big story yet. And we were looking at the amoeba, the one-cell creature, under the microscope, and we were learning the 7 characteristics of living things, which are remarkably similar to the 7 selves. Feeding, breathing, movement, excretion, growth, reproduction, and sensitivity. So I remember looking at that little one-cell creature and wondering, how did it know when it goes through binary fission, how did it even know to become more than itself and become something else? And I'm still amazed at that. So this was my own vital understanding, going back to belonging to life and of being educed. And the Aborigines from Australia would call this an experience of deep listening. Okay. In other words, Thomas says we need to move the basic trend from the human to this larger context of things. Okay. So then flash forward to 2013, when Brian and I joined with Jennifer as board members to found the Deep Time Network, where we have a vital conversation of understanding ourselves as belonging to life, as shared through the wisdoms of science, religion, women, and Indigenous. Okay. So this is in the air across the network. So now moving to a bioregional focus, we have Genesis Farm, which so many of us have been inspired, the work of Miriam McGillis, and also, of course, the farm and what it taught us. And then the various communities across Earth who've also been inspired by the vision that Miriam and Thomas were promoting. So we have the Green Mountain Monastery up in Vermont, where Thomas is buried, and their symbol for their institution is cosmogenesis. You can see there the fish coming together with the jewel in the middle, differentiation, interiority, and communion. Okay. And then across these bioregions, we have the organization Taramitra, which is in Patna, India, and we have Antarshak, which is a Dominican institution in Wicklow, Ireland. And each of those is honoring the bioregion and the indigenous stories and myths that each culture holds to hold the human community as they move with Earth around the seasons. So here in Taramitra, we have the tying of the ribbon around the tree, which extends it from the usual interpretation of tying ribbons around each other for honoring our relation with humans. We're honoring our relation with the trees. And here we have Halloween in Ireland, honoring the ancestors and the thin space. Okay. Then we have Ridge and Valley Charter School, which is a school that was founded in 2004, very close to Genesis Farm, inspired by Genesis Farm. And in June of this year, they got the highest honor that the IRCH Charter gives schools for honoring their principles for eco-justice and sustainability. And they're the first school in the United States to receive that. It's a big honor. And some of the staff then have joined with Maureen, Sisters of Earth, and Thomas Berry Foundation for the Children of the Universe project. And this is the first year, 2025 cohort. And there are 6 mentors and 50 educators in 8 countries from the United States, Canada, the UK, Indonesia, the Philippines, Kenya, Uganda, and India, and then one indigenous school in New Mexico. And they're accepting applications for next year's cohort. There'll be 50 more students, and that deadline is the end of October, and that link will be in the chat as well. Okay. And these are some of the resources that are sent out to the 50 students, and then they're companioned by the mentors through the process for a year. Okay. So now we moved on to Earth as self-propagating. Only by establishing a sense of participation in the enveloping community, by granting other species their proper habitat, and by limiting human activities when they threaten the functioning of other species, can the human groups adjust themselves in ways beneficial to the Earth adventure as a whole. So sense of participation and limiting human activities. And one specific action that we can take and is being taken is a focus on the education of women girls. And with that, it's been shown that the human population slows. So the Earth Charter principle and the Earth Charter and the United Nations Sustainability Goals are focusing on that. Not really doing a great job, but still the focus is there and the effort is there. Okay. So in 2019, 2020, a group of us in Florida joined with Sharon Joy Kleitch of the Connection Partners to take the Friedhof Capra course and have the bioregion of Florida become conscious of itself. And Bill Bilodeau is on the call, and he's part of that. And so we meet every Monday since then, and we share different ventures. And one of these that I was really impressed by was the Outside Sustainable Landscape Cooperative. And the impressiveness of this is that they're focusing on the bioregion of Florida. And although they're focusing just on the importance of Florida native plants and encouraging people to plant Florida native plants, how that leaks over into the 7 selves and the importance of networking for any of our projects is really a great example, because they're involved, with schools, they're involved with developers, they're involved with HOAs. And, it's a statewide process focused on honoring the land and the 7 selves. Okay. Only by establishing a sense of participation in the enveloping community, by granting other species their proper habitat, and by limiting human activities when they threaten the functioning of other species, can the human groups adjust themselves in ways beneficial to the Earth adventure as a whole. So I'm always wondering, how do we propagate this? And then, okay, I turn on the radio. I love my morning tuning in to WMNF 88.5. It's a community-sponsored radio, and which means there's no commercials. And even though they lost their public funding just about 4 weeks ago from the government, they had a one-day fundraiser, and would you believe they raised $250,000? Because the community just really relies on this, as do I, for information and inspiration and understanding our limits. So you can see their community calendar addresses all of the 7 selves, and not only are they on the waves, but they're out in the community as well. So these ideas are being propagated. We kind of think about them in a tangible way, but also over the airwaves. So it's another resource for conveyance and propagation for Earth. WMNF. Thank you.
Thank you, Orla. So on to self-nourishing. Earth as self-nourishing is a basic condition of Earth's work. Thomas writes, "The Earth within the solar system nourishes itself. All nourishment is the Earth-Sun system consuming itself." How do we reinvent our basic patterns of nourishing ourselves that takes guidance from the way the Earth community nourishes itself? What comes to mind? If there's a word or two, just unmute or write it in the chat. Unmute, speak it, or write it in the chat. What comes to mind?
In the chat, I see local transformation. Animals teach us to go to bed when it first gets dark. Should all learn how to grow food. Deep listening and responding. Take only what is necessary for life. No preservatives. Living and growth through and within community. Organic vegetable gardening.
Thank you. On Gabriola, our island community is engaged in a vision for 26 acres of land that is centrally located. For many years, it was a goat farm with a cheese-making business. The new vision for it over the past 20 years now has been land held in common by the residents of this island community. And it's a great advantage that the elementary school is located right across the street from it. Perhaps you can guess why. The vision is that islanders would voluntarily share the responsibility and the care of it. Together, we all engage in its emergence for the common good. As community motivated and community focused, We creatively share the space. A true commons where people and land meet. Since it was zoned as agricultural land, growing food in community gardens and orchards is central to the ongoing work. There's a protected wetland with a boardwalk, a pond serving irrigation needs, and the land is embraced by forest to the east and the west. Truly, it models all the selves in its functioning, in its 20 years of self-emerging, self-governing, self-educating, self-fulfilling mission as a commons for all. But I simply want to focus on self-nourishing, as so much human energy is focused on growing food in community gardens, while also teaching gardening to the children who trot across the street to it. Growing food, helping grow food for people in need of food and for the school lunch programs. The children have an earth literacy program. And that's a bag. They were each given on this day grow a garden bag, a gallon pot of soil, and in it there was kale plant, a bean plant, I believe, and a sunflower to take home. We need to model our food security in ways that are integral to the preservation, protection, and well-being of this land. Caring for the community of life here, in its waters, in the soils, in the diversity of indigenous plants and garden plants, orchard trees, enjoying the great diversity of songbirds, and attracting the beneficial pollinating insects. That's intentional. We intentionally grow flowering plants throughout the gardens to attract the pollinators and to feed them. Having planted many fruit trees over the years, we now offer pruning and grafting workshops for all islanders, also connected to self-propagating. And there's great interest on the island to support all local growers and farmers as much as possible, thereby supporting local economics while limiting the need to transport our food from long distances. This map shows a Gabriola-wide agricultural co-op with quite a diversity of food being grown for sale at markets and homestands. Earth as self-nourishing is a basic function or condition of Earth's work. How are you engaged in this work? Just unmute, say a word or two about how you are engaged in this work, or write it in the chat. Jennifer, is there anything in the chat as I can't see the responses?
Absolutely. Community gardens, growing native wildflowers from seed on our street. I eat seasonal foods, growing lettuce. I grow vegetables on my apartment's balcony, often with the advice of my millennial daughter. Educating ourselves about the larger context that we all share. Managing invasive shrubs and vines within the urban forest. Know the region. My yard is an urban ag demonstration site with many native Florida plants. I belong to a community-supported agriculture farm and buy a share each year. I first learned about this idea from my exposure to Genesis Farm.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So on to self-healing. I know these are sound bites here, but we have to carry on. Earth as self-healing. Our great work now, Thomas would say, is to assist with processes of Earth's regeneration. To heal the Earth, two obvious paths offer themselves. We must say no and yes. No to the processes that are ruining the planet. Yes to those that assist with the planet's regeneration. No to poisons that industrial processes pour into the earth. So long as the patient is inundated with new poisons each second, the healing powers are crippled in their efficacy. We must say no to the processes that are crippling the planet's ecosystems. The instant we stop our assault on the earth, the regenerative powers of earth will be able to perform their work more efficiently. You all remember this scene in 2020 when everything closed down on our planet. The air hovering over industrial cities started to clear pollution. And a plug for regenerative agriculture because of what's been happening to the soils for so long. And this wonderful movement now to regenerative agriculture. This is a course being offered this fall by Bioneers. The regenerative practices in agriculture restores ecosystems, increases biodiversity, helps address the climate crisis by capturing atmospheric carbon. Besides direct action to stop the destruction, we must also provide restorative assistance to the earth community in its healing processes. The natural creeks of the city could be brought back from the sewer drains and become a sparkling presence, safe even for salmon returning from the oceans. And this is an example from Oakland. It's Saucil Creek. Friends of Saucil Creek volunteer group helps to remove invasive species and plant native ones. Restoration. We have something similar here on Gabriola, the shorekeepers. They promote, maintain, and monitor the health of our island, uplands, backshore, shoreline, and intertidal ecosystems. In addition to the work of restoration, we need to restrict in an absolute sense all activities pushing towards the elimination of the planet's wilderness. We need to set off areas where non-human nature is allowed to evolve along its own lines, free from intrusive human management, even of the most enlightened sort. Humans need to eat foods that can evoke health. The foods created by the earth awaken the health of a human. The foodstuffs invented by industrial processes do not awaken the deeper dimensions of health and often activate degenerative processes within the body. The healing of the human at the species level begins with a recognition that health comes from the community and is sustained by the community. What good does it do to restore the health of an individual human if we cannot return the human to a healthy community? To be healthy, coherent individuals, we must have a healthy, coherent community and planet to abide with. When humans unite on a species level and set themselves on the path of restoring the Earth community, a great flood of healing energies will carry us forward into centuries of the most deeply satisfying and pleasurable work. Do any examples come to mind where we are uniting as a global human family for the purpose of restoring the Earth community? Any organizations, programs? I think of Jane Goodall's Roots and Shoots, for instance.
Mm.
Just name them out loud or in the chat. Jennifer, if you see anything in the chat, just let me know what you're reading.
Laudato Si movement. Rewilding Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Pachamama. Green Faith. Sisters of Earth. Local tree preservation and green infrastructure planning. Say all the many organizations that promote organic agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
Transition towns. Sunrise Movement and Extinction Rebellion. Beach restorations. Local futures.
Dr. Green.
Permaculture.
Thank you. Wonderful examples. Carrying on, Earth as self-fulfilling. Fulfillment, Thomas writes, continues to find expression in our children. Running through the meadows, wading in creeks, playing with animals, or simply sitting with utmost satisfaction in a backyard puddle, experiencing the cooling delight of such an environment on a summer's day. Such is the beginning of education, of aesthetic experience, of physical vigor, or acquaintance with the universe. This is the awakening of both the senses and the mind. Ultimately, it is the awakening of the universe itself. This is the beginning of poetry and music and literature. It is the beginning of cosmology, of philosophical reflection, of moral perception, of theological insight. It is the beginning of the epic of evolution. This is the youngest one in my family. The photo was from 3 years ago. She was about 4 pounds at the time, born premature a few weeks, Elena Violet Wild. And when they brought her home from the hospital, their cat just took this immediate bond and attraction and a closeness to the baby all the time. And this is her now, just a photo taken a few weeks ago at a little family holiday place, an acreage where the mushrooms were popping up because of all the rain. One of them was a boleta mushroom, and we discovered it in our mushroom book as being edible. We didn't pick it though, we left it there. But she was so excited, Elena was, to go and meet this mushroom. She had already seen the book, and just the tender touch there in both pictures. Earth as self-fulfilling in our art, imagination, sense of the divine. The rushing out of the wonderful energy of imagination within us from this long, deep time process. A gift. Human participation at the deepest level of the universe is our gift of imagination, but our imagination has to be activated by the natural world. This, just to point you in this direction, it'll be on your mind map to link into it, to listen to the whole talk that Thomas gives on the art and of planet Earth and the crisis of planet Earth, how he blends those together. We won't have time to listen to the audio. I had a little clip here, but little excerpts. When we talk about anything, whether we talk about law or religion or economics or art, the primary referent is the universe in which we live. He talks about, when we gaze at anything in the earth community, it's a communion experience. It evokes something within us. Maybe a poem, maybe a prayer, maybe a song. And the night sky does the same. If we can see the stars, it evokes something within us. Or the rabbit running across the meadow into the forest, or the dogwood tree in full bloom. He names these things within the meadow. Even he says the architecture of the spruce and the pine. It evokes something in us. And the grandeur of the mountains. And he said, you remember this. If we were raised on the moon, a lunar landscape, our sensitivities would be as barren as that. How precious, he says, it is, and how much it conditions not only our sight, but our psychic conditioning. What can you return to in yourselves that hasn't been given to us by the glorious planet Earth? The poets and artists can help restore this sense of rapport with the natural world. It is this renewed sense of reciprocity with nature in all its complexity and remarkable beauty that can help provide the psychic and spiritual energies necessary for the work ahead. And you'll receive several resources on the mind map, but one that I would like to highlight, and it is on the mind map, just came 3 days ago to my attention. Joyce Rouse, musician, composer, I believe she's with us, has created this wonderful music video, We Are One. And if you link on to that, or if you look it up on YouTube, you can experience this wonderful 4-minute musical video. Thank you, Joyce. The Ecozoic. All particular life systems in their being, their sexuality, their nourishment, their education, their governing, their healing, their fulfillment must integrate their functioning within this larger complex of mutually dependent Earth systems. And a last word here from Thomas. He told this to Gail and Bernadette at one point, and Gail shared it with a group of us a few months ago. He said, my job is to get you to think about these things. Your job is to fix it.
Thank you so much, Maureen, Brian, and Orla. Oh my gosh, what a feast. I feel like I'm Elena with that mushroom, totally entranced with the mushroom and entranced with all of these activities that are going on across the planet. It just shows that this is what Earth wants. This is what Earth is pushing for. And the Ecozoic is here already. It's here already in so many of these different activities. And our job is to keep it going and just give birth to the Ecozoic era in all of its glory. Cannot thank you enough. What a lot of work to pull all of that together. There's so much for us to unpack here, and we'll find ways to do that, you know, over time. But this is just incredible to bring these concepts in, to have the big ideas and then the actual examples of them being fulfilled.
Mhm.
And there's so much going on in the Philippines. We've got Marianne Bellicio here. I mean, they're just countless examples of groups and agriculture projects and healing projects and so on that are right in alignment with all of this.
Mhm.
I do want to just point out that we have an Earth Law course coming up starting at September, on September 5th, which of course falls into the self-governing self. But as Maureen keeps saying, all of the selves are within everything. So, you know, it's always hard to totally piece it apart.
Mhm.
But it is important, you know, to think about the, you know, the distinct dimensions and see how they are integrated.
Yeah.
So this particular Earth Law course will be taught by a team of 9 people from around the world. So there again, showing that this stuff is just flowering forth everywhere. And when that happens, we know that's something important, right? To pay attention.
Yeah.
It's not just one person, not just one group. It's happening everywhere. Does anyone? Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead, Maureen.
No, I was just going to say, maybe any final comments from the
Yeah.
gallery, if anyone wants to share a word or two. I saw a few little chats there. Thank you.
Yeah,
But unmute. We could all unmute.
exactly.
I want to say that it was better the second time, if that was possible. I wonder just to hear it again. But I have a question though. Do you know approximately what the population is of your community, your island?
Yes, the population somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000.
That
And
big?
those heat pumps are in over half of the homes here. Everybody loves them, by the way. Coming back to heat pumps.
That's it. I think we need to start thinking small.
Small local communities. Yeah, I
Like,
think that's more sustainable.
yeah, get to know everyone.
Yeah. Thank you, Patricia.
By the way, Joyce is here. Joyce,
Mm.
why don't you put the link in the chat to that latest song, "We Are One."
Musical, yeah, the
We'll
video.
send it. We'll send
Yeah,
it to you.
good.
Okay,
Yeah.
it'll take me a second to get there. My signal is not good this morning, and I've been
That's okay.
kicked off and coming back on, so
No problem. No
and I
problem.
lost you again.
Send us your links. I put my email
Yeah.
in the chat, so I'll add your links onto our chart and onto our mind map as well.
Just Googling also "We Are One" music video, you'll find it right away on a YouTube.
Yeah. So Brian, you put your, and we're going to send it out too. We'll send
Yeah.
Brian's email out. But can you see the power of looking at all these organizations? As
Yeah.
Brian, I mean, that's phenomenal what you've done, Brian.
So thank
Yeah.
you, Maureen and Orla as well. It's a team effort. So
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Great.
And please, all of you, if you're involved in an organization, you know, put the link there and email Brian. Sorry, Brian, but it's yeah, but it's just good because let's say we're focused on one, but we need the others, and it's great then to be able to go into that lotus flower and pull the wisdom from that petal into our lives.
Absolutely. Did you want to say something earlier, Lisa?
Well, you kind of, we're all saying it. I mean, just the gratitude for the effort that you've put in to gather this for us, but also it's such an example of what you're talking about. Just the, I don't, which one category you put in, but just your gathering of these resources and the flourishing of it all, and then sharing it with us. It just, I just feel what you're talking about. not just knowing it and learning, but I feel it.
Yeah, yeah,
Thank you, Lisa.
yeah, that's so powerful. Yeah. Well, thank you, everybody. It's 11:30.
Oh,
8:30 in British Columbia.
Go
Bless,
have breakfast.
I'm going to have a coffee.
yeah, exactly. Blessings on all of your activities, wherever you are, and let's just feel the solidarity, let's solidarity, because it's there and it's real. And we're all working, we're all in the present and working toward the future at the same time.
Yeah.
So blessings on everybody. Have a great
Yeah.
day, great night, wherever you are.
Thank
Thank you so
Jennifer.
much.
Okay,
Jennifer,
thank you.
thank
Jennifer,
you.
save the chat
Thank
so I
you.
can read what
Thank you.
Yeah,
was
we'll
there.
get it.
Thank you.
Yep, got it.